I never had a relationship with God. It's not I believed or I didn't believe, I just didn't know him. In my house, it was, God is good, but why is God good? He just is. I don't have to go to church to worship. Well, how do you worship? I just do. That was pretty much the extent of our relationship with God. We grew up pretty poor. We lived in a mobile home that didn't have any windows. We put plastic up to the windows. We were highly infested with roaches. The water didn't work. Half the time we didn't have clean clothes or couldn't take a bath. We'd have to go to a neighbor's house. So I'd get picked on in school for that. And then I'm also dyslexic. I wasn't diagnosed, so I just felt stupid. And it didn't help the fact that, I'd be reading and I'd lose my place. That was like a huge thing. Yeah. And I'd have to start over, and I'd get confused. And the teacher would get frustrated and just call on somebody else. And everybody would laugh. It wasn't until I was an adult that I was diagnosed and they realized what was going on with me. Not to get into it real deep, but between the age of 6 and 10, there was 3 different males in my life that had some sort of sexual contact with me. So I kind of blocked that out. I didn't tell anybody. It didn't happen intentionally, is what I would tell myself. Then I kind of just went on to autopilot, I never felt in control of myself. Sometimes I felt like I was out of body watching myself, but couldn't control what was going on. My mom is a very hardworking woman, did everything she could to provide for her family. She had undiagnosed mental health issues, depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts and tendencies, stuff like that she had going on. My dad didn't work very much. He was in and out of the picture, in and out of jail. He was alcoholic. He had gambling problems. My dad's abusive to my mom. So then when I was about 13, I started drinking and smoking weed pretty regularly.
Can you go back to the verbal abuse stuff? What's the kind of stuff that you would hear him say?
Stupid, fat, ugly, you'll never be anything, you'll never get another man, things like that he would say to her. But, as I got older, I went to a dance one time and I had on a turtleneck, and I wasn't allowed to go because it was too tight. It was just, he was extreme. I remember one of our arguments right before I moved out of the house. He threw coffee in my face. We got into a huge argument, and I had said to him, while you're here, why don't you just try being a dad and hugging me and telling me you're happy to see me instead of trying to discipline me and all that. And he throws coffee in my face, and I moved out after that. I was 16.
Was the coffee hot?
It wasn't like scalding hot, but it was warmer than what I wanted it to be in my face. I can laugh about it now, but.
So home life was rough.
It was. And until recently, I would have told this story much differently. I would have told you that I had a great childhood, that my mom and dad loved me, and that's it, because I had so much blocked out. So then, to get back to it, when I was 13, I started drinking and smoking weed pretty regularly. When I was 15, I was raped. I did report this one to my family. And they said, well, did you say no? And I said, of course I said no. They said, well, did you tell him to stop? I said, the entire time, all I kept saying was, please stop, please stop. They said, did you fight him? I said, no, I didn't fight him. They said, well, we're not going to report it because they're not going to believe you. I was undiagnosed bipolar, and this really kicked that into gear. I got angry and violent, and I'm fighting every chance I can. I got promiscuous. My body's not my own anyway, so why say no? I don't have that right. People can take it. Then I met what would become my husband and my daughter's father. I met him when I was 14, but he was much older than I was. He was 22 when I was 14. So when I turned 16, I moved in with him. Me and my dad got into that fight, and I moved in with him. He was cheating on me. He made a child through cheating on me. I remember one night he pulled me out of bed, and he put his foot in my throat, and he said, if you move, I'll kill you. I believed him, so, I just laid there. That was the most scared I've ever been. And when I got up, he come near me, and I had a beer mug with iced tea in it. He come over to me, and I said, don't come any closer to me. And when he did, I bashed him in the head with this glass, cut his head open. He had to get staples in the back of his head. He's broke my arm. I've had to have surgery on my knee because he kicked me in the knee. I have a screw in it, and he kicked me in the screw, and it went through the kneecap. It was a volatile relationship, extremely toxic. So when I left him, my mom was like, you should go back. He's gonna need help raising that baby. He can't do it on his own. So I went back. At 19, I got pregnant. Now at this point in time, I'm drinking every day. I mean, I'm falling down drunk. Coming home 6 o'clock in the morning drunk, going to work. So then I got pregnant and I switched gears. I'm gonna be the best mother in the entire world. I watched every Super Nanny episode and I was really applying all them techniques and they work. I'm reading every parenting book in the world. My husband paid the bill, so I got a job a couple hours a day just so I could afford to take her places. So I'd work a couple hours, she'd go to daycare, and then I'd come home, take her to the beach and take her to the water park. And we did the park and one other adventure every single week. I mean, life was great. It was me and her. I blew my knee out for the 4th time and had to have surgery. And they put me on a bunch of pain pills. I had nerve damage. I can't even take them. They make me sick. And they're like, oh, you'll get used to them. You'll get used to them. This was before everybody realized how dangerous they were. My pills were coming up missing. That's how I finally realized he was on drugs. And I left him. I'm like, I'm not having my daughter around a drug addict. I left him, then I end up getting on the pills really bad. They get a hold of me. We get back together, then he ends up cheating on me on our anniversary. That's when he broke my arm, because when I caught him, he got mad at me and slammed my arm in the car door. And I'm on drugs now. I'm on pills and stuff pretty bad. The doctors are kind of catching on. They cut me off, so I start dating this other guy, and he does heroin, so he introduces me to heroin. When I first started with the pills and stuff, my daughter was about 5 or 6. When I got pretty strung out on heroin, she was about 7 to 8. She ended up living with my mom at about 8. I emptied my mom's bank account probably 5 times. I stole all of her jewelry and pawned it. I did some very shameful things. My sister was battling cancer. I just got out of jail. I was in and out of jail for fighting and theft. It was little stays. I'd go in for a week or 2, or the most was 60 days. So I come out from the 60-day stay to find out that my sister has cancer. She's not a morning person, so she refuses to get up and go to chemo. So, I decide that's my mission, to make sure she gets to her chemo. And I did. I was there with her every single time, but I'm still in my addiction, so I'm stealing from her too. I stole her pills. I stole money from her. She forgave me instantly, immediately, just said, please get clean. She passed away before she got to see me clean. So I quit using heroin and I start smoking crack, because that's so much better, right? I just hit an all new low. I'm sleeping in the woods just so I can use drugs. I get arrested October of 2016. I'm with this girl. We've been on a 4-day drug binge. Been awake for 4 straight days. Drugs have finally ran out. We're trying to get more. She runs out of gas. So it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. So we go looking in people's sheds trying to find a gas can. Well, she finds keys to the car. So she gets in the car and starts driving off. I get in it with her. We get where we're going. She gets out to go get the drugs or whatever. I end up falling asleep. So the cops come, I'm in the car asleep. The keys are in the ignition. So I got charged with theft of an automobile and a bunch of charges. I ended up going to jail. I was in there for 2 weeks and they let me out on probation. I went to get some one day and I get pulled over leaving, and I want it because I never reported to probation. So I go back to jail. This was in January of 2017. My family's pretty much aware at this point in time I'm getting some time. So they bail me out so that I can be with them for a couple more weeks until I get sentenced. So I'm out on bail. Somebody comes to me with the news that my husband had died. We were still very close. I never seen my future without him in it, even though I didn't think it was going to be romantically. And I remember when I got the news, I immediately collapsed to the ground crying. I was screaming out to the sky, God, why do you hate me? Why do you hate me? When you're an addict, everybody says, why can't you just stop? And the addict's like, I'm only hurting myself. We really believe that. That was the first time I realized somebody's addiction can hurt more than just them, because his addiction broke my heart. His addiction devastated my daughter. This pain that we're feeling is from his addiction. It was just pure devastation that you've seen in this child's eyes. She was just broken beyond words. Right then there, as soon as I seen that look, I knew it's time to change. I do not want to be the reason that she feels this way. still hopeless, still didn't see any hope in it actually happening. But in my heart, that's what I felt. Later on that night, I guess I would say I'm fighting hysteria. I'm crying and I'm laughing and I'm angry and I'm scratching at my arm so bad that I'm bleeding. And I'm just sitting there looking at a window wanting to kick it out. I mean, I'm having so many emotions all at one time. I just didn't even know what to do with it. And I said to myself, maybe death isn't so bad. Wonder how much I need to do to overdose. And at that very moment, just as clear as you and I sitting here talking, I heard, it was a Saturday night, and I heard, you got nothing to lose, go to church tomorrow. And I'm like, I look around like, who just said that? And I don't know why I was obedient to this voice. For the life of me, I look back and I'm like, I don't know what made me listen. But I looked at my daughter, I said, let's go to church tomorrow. She said, okay. We get to church. I wasn't there 5 minutes. And he stops the music and he says, I don't know who this message is for, but the Lord says you have to surrender to him. You won't make it on your own, but if you surrender, he'll get you through it. That message changed my life. Like, I collapsed to the ground crying. And after a service, I went up to him and I said, how do I surrender? And he came down to my house that night with Ray Apsher. You know, we sat and we talked for a while, and they prayed the salvation prayer with me, and they prayed for deliverance. And I've never touched drugs again. Never since that day. Let me go back, because then I get sentenced, because I still had a pending court case. I get sentenced. My pastor was trying to get me into Teen Challenge. The judge said no, because you can't be court ordered. I don't blame him. I kept running. So they sentenced me to the Crest, and the Crest is not a spiritual program. It's a in-jail program. So as I said, I got dyslexia, so I'm pretty nervous. Like, how am I going to read this Bible with nobody here to talk to me about it? So I get to the Crest, and my counselor is a pastor. So our one-on-one sessions where, I'm like, well, I read this, and we're talking about God, and we pray together, and it ended up, working out just as it should. I remember sitting in my cell. I would get up every morning and read my Bible, and I would always pray. And again, I had no, I'm just starting out in this, and I'm in jail, so I have no real guidance. So I'm really struggling with, how can God love me? How can he, what I've done? It's not that easy. So I remember I'm praying on it one day, and I'm like, God, you show me what you need me to do for you to forgive me. Show me how to earn your love. And I did what back then frequently, I would do what I would call blindly opening my Bible, just flip it open wherever it was I'd read. And I opened it up to Luke 7:36 through 50. And I was done. I was done then. I was like, okay, I'm all in. I'm all in.
When I found that passage, I was like a baby Christian, and I wept because she's me.
Yeah, and me. Yes, that passage just, I finally let down all my guards. I was like, okay. Maybe I am just forgiven. Maybe he does just love me. Maybe I am enough. Forgiving myself was a struggle. But when I finally did, it was like a very freeing moment. I came home from jail. I didn't want to go back to my old town. I didn't want to live with though I love my mom, I adore my mom, but I didn't want to live with her because it was easy to fool her. I needed somebody to hold me accountable, not to, make excuses for me. Mm-hmm. So I went and stayed in a camper down on the camp. They had a camper at the campground. So I went and stayed down there for a little bit. My daughter was with me as much as she could be because, immediately she wanted to be back with me. And I had my dog, and that was pretty much it. And then I ended up moving in with my sister. She's a hard case, so she would not tolerate any nonsense whatsoever. And then I ended up moving out and getting my own place. So as I started to say earlier, probably 4 years ago, I would have told this story much differently. Most of the time you hear about addicts, and you're running from some sort of pain, and I'm like, not me. My childhood was great. I got on pills because of the doctors, period. Didn't look at the trauma of my youth, so I'm set free from drugs and alcohol and all that, and God's starting to work on me. I don't like the same music anymore, and I don't wear the same clothes anymore, and everything's different. And he starts working on me about getting out of sexual sin. I'm trying, like every time it hits me, I'm praying in my spirit. I feel that's what I need to do, and I'm fired up. That's what I'm gonna do. And then when it comes down to it, I just can't say no. And I'm like, I'm really disgusted, and I don't understand why I can't say no. God, show me what's the problem. How do I do this? And he showed me like my childhood.
Yes.
I'm like, no, that's not it. I know that, but I'm not mad about that. He kind of showed me that I hate the men. And I'm like, yeah, I hate them. They deserve my hate. And he's like, so then I realized, wait, if they didn't do nothing wrong, why do I hate them? So I started digging in, and, I just started dealing with myself and dealing with that and how I felt about it and forgiving them and moving on with it. And once I did that, everything changed. I was shown everything in a whole, and that's when the real healing began. Like I thought I was healed when the addiction was over, but I really wasn't. Everything about me is changed. My daughter said to me the other day, Mom, you find joy in the weirdest things. And I'm like, that's Jesus in me, honey. I seen birds splashing around in a mud puddle, and it was just brought me so much joy and pleasure.
Who is God?
There's a million answers, but the simple answer is my Father.
What have you been learning lately?
I'm still in the process of being comfortable in social situations. I'm working very hard on that, but I'm still very awkward. So I'm working on figuring out what's next, how this story is meant to be used, figuring out what I'm supposed to do to fulfill God's purpose in me. This is one more thing, let me say to anybody that sees this. When you go through that type of change, you are going to have people that resist it. Yay, Jenn found God and she's sober, but now they're like, what do you mean you don't listen to this song? What do you mean you don't wear low-cut tops now?
So you took God too seriously.
And that's what I'm being told.
You're learning how to be with people. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
I am very awkward. I didn't do good with making friends as a kid, and now as an adult, I find it even harder. What do? Walk up, say, hi, I'm Jenn, you want to grab lunch? And I'm like, no, you don't do that. That's weird. So I'm trying to learn how to make friends in a healthy and not weird way.
I've heard somebody say that the age that you become addicted becomes the age you stop kind of growing and developing.
Yes. Life's great for me, but I still have struggles. Yeah. I didn't grow up until I was 34, 35. When you were 18 learning how to pay bills, I wasn't. So now I'm in the process. I'm 39 years old. I own a car and a little trailer that's got a hole in the roof, but it's my little trailer with the hole in the roof. So I own a bucket that catches the water too, so.
I own a bucket.
Everything's like baby steps in the right direction, because the things that I should have done back then, I didn't. And now I really wish I did it back then. It would have been a lot easier, but now I'm doing it now.
Favorite color?
Green.
Favorite kind of dog?
My favorite breed is rescued.
Favorite place?
Beach.
The beach. Me too.
Love the beach.
Favorite band?
That's a hard one. So,
what have you been enjoying lately? That's easier.
So I've been on, I like gospel, and I like all different genres of Christian music, kind of. And then I like some country. This is how I fight my battles. It's such a repetitive song, and I hate repetitive songs.
You hate repetitive songs, but you like that one.
I listen to that song every morning and just remind myself how to fight the battle.
Favorite food?
I'm a steak and potato girl, 100%.
Yeah, so that is the next question. Sweets or salty?
Salty.
Yeah, exactly. What's a job you wish you could do?
Drug and alcohol counselor.
Drug and alcohol counselor. That's like your dream job.
That's my dream. Well, Christian drug and alcohol counselor is my dream job, because a lot of drug and alcohol counselors, you can't speak of God and Jesus, and I can't really tell my story without Jesus.
That's doable, Jenn. That's a doable dream.
Yeah.
Can I put that on the prayer chain?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for letting me.